Hey everybody, this is Attorney Veronica McClendon, the owner and CEO of McClendon Law and Consulting, located in Macon, Georgia. Somebody asked me today, what is probate? It's one of those terms that as lawyers we use all the time, and I admit that a lot of times I use what we call legalese, and I'm just saying the words and assuming everybody knows what I'm talking about, but I gotta stop doing that. So I'm going to talk to y'all today about what probate means, what it is, and why it's so important. And we're just going to go into it. So probate is a general term that's often used to describe the process that you go through when someone has died and you need to legally change the ownership of their property from the deceased person's name into the name of the people that they left their property to. Technically speaking, probate in Georgia at least only happens when the person has died with the will. And so you have to probate the will. And I think it's a Latin word that means something like to prove. It could be another language. It could mean something else. But I think it means to prove the will. So it gives you a chance as the person saying that this is the will of a deceased person and I want to present this will to the court. Then you're basically showing that the proper requirements for executing the will were followed and that this is indeed the will of the deceased person. A lot of times as lawyers and anybody really, we interchange the word probate for estate administration. And estate administration means that it's the process of, again, settling a deceased person's final affairs, paying off their debts, and making sure that their property is transferred over to the people that they leave behind. So estate administration really is the general term. And probate is an estate administration that happens with someone who had a will. At least that's the way I understand it. And again, like I said, we kind of use the words interchangeably. And you go to the probate court regardless of whether the person had a will or not. So probate is sometimes used to describe the estate administration process. And so just to make sure everybody kind of knows how this plays out. Again, someone has died and they had certain property. It could have been real estate. It could have been personal property like bank accounts or stocks and bonds or tractors, cars, like whatever it might be. If they own property at the time of their death, the person who their family or their friends someone needs to come forth and start the probate process to change the ownership from the deceased person to the people who they left behind. If the person had a will, they get to leave their property to whoever they want to. Or if they had a trust, you can avoid the probate process altogether. So that's another video that we'll talk about, or the estate administration process. You can avoid that altogether if you have a trust. But as far as a will is concerned, if you have a will, you can use your will to say, this is where I want my property to go. This is who I want to receive it. This is how I want them to receive it. All of that can be put in a will. And then the person presenting the will to the court is going to probate that will, prove the will, allow the will to legally control those assets that that deceased person has left behind. If they died without a will, then they are called intestate. Their estate is intestate. And so there needs to be an administrator appointed, and that administrator's job is to make a list of everything that that person owned and then change the ownership over to their heirs at law. Again, that process has to happen before the ownership can change over to the heirs at law. A lot of times people don't go through that legal process, and so then we end up with property that's in the name of a deceased person, and that can cause a lot of challenges. So for example, you may inherit a house, you live in this house that your father owned or your mother owned, or even one of your grandparents may have owned it. You've inherited it, you live in it, you take care of it, and then you go and try to handle some business with it. You need to refinance the mortgage, or you need to get a loan on the property, whatever it is, or even get the windows fixed. There's a lot of different things that you might need to do where you need to show that you're the owner of the property. And if you can't show that you're the owner of the property, then you might have trouble accomplishing that thing that you want to do. And so probate is what changes the ownership out of the name of the deceased person and puts it into the names of their heirs, or if they had a will, their beneficiaries, the people they left their property to. Another thing that's important about probate is that it is the opportunity for you to notify any potential creditors. And so if there's someone that deceased person owed money to at the time of their death, or even before then, some bill that they may have accrued, their creditors are going to want to be paid back. And they can't get their money back from the deceased person, so they want to get it back from the estate. But they would not know who to contact to get the bill paid unless someone goes through that process to notify the creditors through the probate or estate administration process. And that's something that's legally required here in Georgia. And so you want to make sure that that's done, because otherwise you might be enjoying the property and then at some point someone comes knocking on your door and say, hey, you got this house from so-and-so owed me this much money. So since you didn't go through probate, notify me. I would like you to pay me the money that I'm owed. And there's a lot of process that goes into it, but that's another important reason for probating or administering an estate. So I hope this was helpful in helping you to understand what probate is, what estate administration is, what's the differences between the two that don't really make a difference, because today we use the terms interchangeably, as I mentioned. But I hope it was helpful to you. If it was helpful, why don't you share it with a friend, like this video, and also leave a comment. I would love to know what other questions you have, what more information I can share that would be helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something. Make sure that you subscribe, like this video, share it with a friend, leave a comment. I would love to hear what you thought. And if you have any questions or anything else that you want to cover, let me know and I'll make sure to cover it in one of my upcoming videos. Again, this is Veronica McClendon, the family land lawyer, owner of McClendon Law and Consulting, the family land law firm. Take care.